Now, can we try again the distinguished delegation of Sikh human rights, please? You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me now? Wonderful. There is no doubt that globalization has changed the world we live in and that it presents new and complex challenges for the protection of human rights. Over recent decades, economic players, especially transnational corporations that operate across national borders, have gained unprecedented and unregulated power and influence across the globe. Furthermore, it is an indisputable fact that companies have an enormous impact upon people's lives and the communities in which they operate. Therefore, whilst this may sometimes be a positive impact, jobs created, or the emergence of new technology that improves lives and investment in the community, which in turn translates into real benefits for those who live there, millions of adults and children around the world continue to suffer grave human rights abuses as workers, obtaining raw materials, toiling on farms, or making products for the global market. Consequently, the Sikh Human Rights Group wholeheartedly welcomes and supports the formulation and enactment of a binding instrument to regulate, in international human rights law, the activities of transnational corporations and other business enterprises. However, we are concerned with the limited phraseology of Article 8, subsection 4 of the second revised draft. In other words, we agree with Palestine's oral submission during the sixth session of this open-ended intergovernmental working group that the notion of criminal liability contained therein could be further strengthened by the mentioning of specific examples of sanctions and or penalties that companies could face should they be prosecuted. In this regard, we recommend the addition of the following language at the end of Article 8, subsection 4, that reads, "State parties shall adopt legal and other measures necessary to ensure that their domestic jurisdiction provides for the effective, proportionate and dissuasive criminal and or administrative sanctions where legal or natural persons conducting business activities have directly or indirectly caused or contributed to criminal offences or other regulatory breaches that amount or lead to human rights abuses, such as the withdrawal of licenses, the termination of contracts for company projects, their inclusion on a prohibited list of companies for business, and or the freezing of company assets." In regards to Article 8, subsection 9 of the second revised draft, we also agree that it is crucial to articulate that criminal liability is also triggered by a business activity that violates war crimes, crimes against humanity, and other grave breaches of international human rights and humanitarian law. Therefore, in this regard, we recommend that Article 8, subsection 9 reads as follows. Subject to their legal principles, state parties shall ensure that their domestic law provides for the criminal or functionally equivalent liability of legal persons for human rights abuses or violations that amount to criminal offences under international human rights law binding on the state party, including, but not limited to, customary international law, their domestic law and or humanitarian law, and when appropriate, states should refer cases where corporations and or state officials are causing or contributing to war crimes, crimes against humanity, aggression, genocide, and environmental crimes to the International Criminal Court in accordance with the Rome Statute rules. Further or alternatively, if it is not possible or feasible to refer the aforementioned cases to the International Criminal Court, then all appropriate steps must be taken by this working group and states to establish an independent judicial body whose mandate is to ensure that transnational corporations and other business enterprises are held accountable and appropriately penalised for their grave breaches of international human rights law. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That concludes my submission.
Thank you very much for your comments. Now I recognize the distinguished representative of Friends of the Earth International. You have the floor.